Hello again, and welcome back to the Farming Flowers podcast. I'm so thrilled this week we get to have a conversation with one of my all time favorite YouTubers, Jessie Babbitt from B.A.R.E Flower Farm. She very graciously is giving us a little bit of her time today. I know she's a busy, busy lady. But I wanted to bring her on for this series that we're doing on resilience because she really has learned the hard way how to develop some resilience. And so I'll let her share a little bit about her story. But she got a major curveball thrown at her and her family last year. And so I kind of want to just pick her brain a little bit about what came up for her and how she decided to pivot her flower farming business and yeah, kind of just where she is at this stage. So welcome, Jessie.
Thank you so much for having me, Lisa.
So fun to chat with you. I was just telling her it feels so weird I watch her on YouTube all the time and it just feels so weird. I'm just right here chatting with her. So such a nerd.
Well, I told her that I'm just any other ordinary person who just happens to have a camera and click record and put it online.
Well, we all appreciate it though. So, okay, Jessie, maybe just kind of give us a little bit of a little bit of the history on this curveball that you got thrown last year, because you were really going great guns on your flower farming. You were expanding and getting into all kinds of new stuff. So let's maybe start with curveball, and then kind of just talk about how you learned to pivot, and maybe we'll just go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was in my third year of flower farming. And as you said, I was really starting to get into it, but not necessarily just the flower farming part, also the YouTube, the Patreon part. I realized that I really did love the content creation piece, but also obviously the growing piece. And there were thoughts in my head around, okay, like how do I potentially get this to be something that's a little bit more sustainable, where 5 years out, I might even consider quitting my corporate job. So I got as far as that. And I remember that I had just attended the ASCFG conference, which happened to be a regional one in New York City. And it was that week that I took off. And so Monday and Tuesday went to the conference. And then I even got to like a little fender bender accident on that Monday coming back from the conference. And so it was just, it was one of those weeks. My husband ended up going to the ER for some just like unrelated incident, and he was completely fine. And then the next day after, which was, I remember it was a Thursday, we felt a lump behind my daughter's thigh. And my daughter was then 16 months old. She obviously couldn't talk. She was quite chunky. And it was my husband who found it. And right away, we called the pediatrician, and that's when the cascade events happen. So that's one of those things in time where for us, we had a bit of a suspicion just because of my husband's prior history also with pediatric cancer. So we took it very seriously, and luckily our pediatrician also took it seriously. And long story short, we ended up driving to the ER the next day. We went directly to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and within a week she was diagnosed with something called rhabdomyosarcoma, and that is a rare pediatric form of cancer which affects about 400 to 500 kids every single year in the United States. And it's got like a decent prognosis depending on when you catch it. But for my daughter, she had a very aggressive tumor subtype just because there was a genetic mutation that caused it. And so basically it was just, she was in this like intermediate high risk category. And a part of the cancer journey, or really any type of illness journey that has mortality put in front of you, you kind of get to this before and after moment. And so, like your life is just not the same after. So very quickly, everything obviously pivoted towards my daughter. The first few months, honestly, of that was really just figuring out like what to do. And you're working with your oncologist, figuring out what the treatment plan is going to look like. But so many different things can happen, because here's the plan. And the question is, how does she respond to treatment? What do things need to look like? And I'll say that I was very fortunate enough with some of the work that I've been doing full time. I work in the healthcare industry. I've understood that you can show one scan to 5 different providers and they might interpret it differently. So all this to say, it impacted my season because we were in the middle of summer. This was late
Yeah.
July, and I still had really the prime of the season ahead of me because I've been really trying to optimize for later summer to early fall, especially since I was selling at the cooperative to
Hmm.
florists who had their events picking up then.
Oh,
Uh,
right.
and,
Yeah.
and of course, none of that matters when your child or a loved one
Yeah.
has this
Yeah.
facing them. So I think to summarize, we had to look at treatment. Basically, it was what, 3 times 12, so 36 weeks of chemotherapy with
My
surgery
gosh.
embedded in there, potentially this concept of radiation even happening in there,
Hmm.
right? So there were just a lot of things, and things just stop, and then you just reevaluate what's important for you.
When you were in the thick of all of that, I mean, because I'm thinking back to a couple years ago, my mom was in the hospital on life support, and I had to fly back to Oklahoma, and it was the middle of the season. And being like a single owner collective that I own, I did everything. And you're right, everything stops. I mean, I got on a plane and I spent the time in Oklahoma, but we had markets going on, we had wholesale orders going on, and I just remember, like you said, none of that mattered to me at all. And so when you're in the deepness of that, it, the little tiny thoughts that pop up of like, oh my gosh, there are all these people depending on me, and I need to look at my email, or I need to, do whatever. When you were in the deepness of all of that, what was it that brought you back to thinking about what you needed to do for your flower farm, for your business, for what was coming up with, like you said, florists with events and things are happening in the world? I mean, how do you decide, and when do you decide to do that? Oh.
Yeah, it's a bit of a luxury to be able to say that I can flower farm on the side, do the content creation on the side, and
Hmm.
if I decided not to do anything else, really there'd be no ramifications. And that
Yeah.
was realistically the place that I was in. Realistically, nothing mattered except for figuring out how do I best support and advocate for my daughter. And
Hmm.
I knew nothing really about oncology, like outside of the typical things that people might hear about. Like, I didn't even know what chemotherapy really meant.
Yeah.
So at that point, it was all right, like, what do I need to drop in order to make sure that I can be 100% focused on her?
Hmm.
So anyone who was following me on YouTube at the time knows that for, I think it was over like a month and a half, it was just radio silence. I
Hmm.
basically completely dropped off of social media at the time. I very quickly told the people who I work with in my full time job, as well as the girls at the cooperative, that, hey, this has happened. I was very transparent and open about what happened, but you're not
Yeah.
going to hear from me. Like, I'm just not going to have the capacity, and really giving myself that mental headspace to be able to fully immerse myself in my daughter's treatment.
Hmm.
A lot of people will say that when they first get the news from the provider that they receive that devastating news, your child has cancer or you have
Yeah.
cancer, like they can't remember what happened in that conversation.
Mm.
uh, I, I had an inkling that it was going to be bad, and I had already started doing the research. And like, not only do I remember actually like the details of that conversation, but I was actually already asking about, okay, like preserving her ovaries is really important to me because like we did IVF because of, what happened to my husband. I want to make sure she has
Hmm.
a shot at that, right? So like I was already forward thinking, and I knew that there was just so much that I didn't know that I needed to reserve that time and space for me to be able to do that. Right.
Yeah.
So, and even today, I continue doing that. And that has also impacted how I think about the time I can allocate to the flower farm and content creation.
Hmm. Um, so when you've got all this emotional weight going on your entire family, and yet there are all these flowers out in your field that need to be harvested, and or maybe you have orders coming in. Was your CSA going at that time? Because I know you have like the delivery, or you weren't doing delivery, you were letting people come to the farm and pick up. What do you do like in that spur of the moment? I know you have to just stop, and things just stop, but at some point you have to come back and answer to people and pick up the pieces. And what did you do?
Yeah, I was just so lucky that that was the year I was trying to go full force wholesale. So I had
Okay.
very limited retail responsibilities outside of
Okay.
providing the local country store shop. But
Yeah.
there was this moment in, I think it was starting in like mid to late August, the Lysianthus were coming in.
Mm,
Everything else that I was starting to succession plan for September was coming in. And I did
yeah.
make it to the co-op a couple of times. And
Did you
I remember
really?
I did, and I remember I showed up one
Wow.
day and they were like, "Oh my god, like how do you have so many flowers?" I had these like
Hmm.
awesome cosmos. I remember I
Oh,
had callas and stock. Like I have a very vivid photo of that in my head just because it was like,
hmm.
"Oh my god, like all of this still grew even though
Yeah.
I had zero uh like oversight and really took care of them at all over the last few weeks, but yet they
Yeah.
still grew for me." So I did make it to co-op a couple of times, but then it got to the point where it was just so overwhelming because we were headed down that fork in the road, which was we might have differing opinions on what to do next. And at that time, we were actually seeking a second opinion in New York City at MSK, since originally we were getting our care in Philadelphia at CHOP.
Hmm.
And I just opened up my field to local flower farmers as well as even florists. It was like, come on over, cut whatever you want. I'm not going to charge anything. Like, I just don't want this to go to waste. And I think that was the
Yeah.
point where I finally understood the people who grow flowers for the emotional
Hmm.
and mental piece of it, right? When people say flowers saved me, like, I can now understand. But before, that wasn't something that I could understand. I come from a very pragmatic, utilitarian type of
Hmm.
thinking, especially from my parents. They're immigrants to this country, they didn't have a lot of money. So a lot
Yeah.
of what I grew up in was really embedded in pragmaticism. So buying flowers is obviously not pragmatic when you're on the
Right.
very low part of the Maslow's
Right.
hierarchy of needs, right?
Right.
So all this to say, I was able, I think one of the flower farmers that was local to me did take me up on my offer, came a couple of times to cut. And that made me feel really great because obviously they were able to use the flowers, put them to use. I think a couple of other florists just didn't have the time, but that was then where I would say probably about 60% of flowers outside actually could have been cut and didn't get cut.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we just ended up going to that space sometimes at night after chemo. And it was just nice
Yeah.
to be in there. And I think that's a really good example of me realizing, like, hey, like this is why some people garden, like
Yeah.
just to enjoy it.
Yeah, enjoy the flowers because we
Yeah.
never get to see flowers blooming in our field.
Yes,
If we're
exactly.
doing it correctly, they
Yeah.
should have been harvested already and gone. So, yeah, that's an interesting sort of a way to enjoy what you're growing, because we
Yeah.
don't get to.
And if
Um,
I could have, I would have definitely cut and given them away for free. We just didn't have the capacity.
yeah. Yeah, you're in survival mode at that point. So, once you come out of the which I mean it was a long journey though. You're still in the journey, but once you were able to get past the critical stage and you were having to make some decisions on what was going to continue with your farm because I think yeah, for it I think it could be easy for someone to just stop and just say, this has to all end. I have to just focus on, whatever the curveball was, this has to be my life now. So you were able to actually deal with the curveball, but then you also saved your business. You didn't say, no, I'm just done. You made some major pivots and you were able to make some changes and so let go of some of the sales channels like you're not doing the co-op anymore, right? You let go of doing the co-op and so you were really able to come up with some ways that worked within the capacity that you had at that time, but you seem to have had like some forethought though on which of these sales channels that you knew would probably work with this pivot or did you and also to be profitable too because you definitely are all about making flower farming profitable. So how did your mindset how did it lead you to be able to decide what you were going to try to keep and what you were able to just let go of?
Yeah, I think there are two things to touch upon on this. One is because I do talk about running a business and a profitable side hustle. And it's not necessarily about making money, it's about
Right.
making the time worth it, because there's an opportunity cost to you having a side hustle, which is
Yeah.
not spending time with your family or
Yeah.
other things, right? So
Yeah.
it's really about making sure that the time that you're spending on the flower farm is worth it. Uh, but because I had kept track of numbers, like I knew in my mind immediately the cooperative was awesome. I learned so much, and the women who run that cooperative are amazing. But it was honestly not a great sales channel for me because it was really far away. It was an
Hmm.
hour each way. I think if it were a
Yeah.
little bit closer, it would be a little bit different. But realistically, I just was not growing enough to really have a significant impact on
Hmm.
like what they were offering, right? Like you could drop me from the list of growers and there would be really no meaningful impact versus if you
Yeah.
drop like the top two growers, you would definitely feel an impact when you walk onto market floor. That being said, one of the things that I really strategized when I grew at the co-op was providing more specialty things or just unique things that other people weren't growing to be able to provide that kind of variety. And I think that that's where I was able to add that value. But again, you take me out of the picture, co-op is going to be perfectly fine without me, right? So to me, that was a bit of a no-brainer. The other thing was very clear, like I was not going to do winter tulips. And I think that gets to the second point that I want to talk about was the main commitment I had was all of these fall bulbs and
Yeah.
corms that were coming in.
Right.
In fact, yesterday I was scrolling through my photos from a year ago and I had a pallet. I think it was like maybe 17 to 18 crates of tulip bulbs that I had.
Mm.
And I had ordered both from Netherland Bulb Co. as well as Ampersand Bulb Company. And Linda DeArco actually proactively reached out to me. She's like, you do not need to take these bulbs if you don't have the
Oh,
capacity. Like we're more than willing to
she's
to
so great.
yeah, she was fantastic, and I think she even offered them to me for free, and I was like, "Look,
Oh.
like, absolutely not, like, I also wanna support you, I know I can move these bulbs even if I don't grow it," and so that's when really the flower farming community really rallied behind us. At the time, we basically just resold the majority of the pre-chill tulip bulbs that I had ordered. I'd also ordered anemone and ranunculus corms,
Oh
some of which I
gosh.
was already planning on reselling anyway, but I was planning on
Yeah.
keeping quite a bit for me to grow and basically was able to sell a lot of it. And that money helped us fund a lot of the integrative stuff that we continue doing with my daughter, right? So I think that there was a bit of a commitment to wanting to move forward because of how great the farming community was, as
Hmm.
well as really recognizing that there continues to remain this gap, which is really helping these smaller growers be able to achieve a sustainable, profitable side hustle to grow.
Hmm.
And this really comes back to this original mission that I had, which is actually rooted more around sustainability. And I firmly believe that more local flowers, more local growers is better for the environment, better for the earth, better for the next
Absolutely.
generation. Because
Absolutely.
no matter what, the carbon footprint's going to be smaller. Home growers typically are not going to spray. If they spray, it's not at the same scale as these commercial
Right.
growers. And I just really believe that if you could have more of these smaller growers thrive, it's ultimately better for everyone, right? So I still felt really connected to that mission, and I really still wanted to make it work in terms of having a business where I could continue but still focus on my daughter's recovery.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's and I mean, you have to do what you have to do in that moment. And yeah, I had forgotten that you had all those tulips and stuff about it coming at about that time. Yeah, that would probably freak me out. Oh my gosh. But you did that beautifully. So
Yeah, I mean, I've
um
also had enough experience in the past to know like what I need to do to offload them. But sorry, my
yeah,
dog is barking
that's
because someone's
okay.
at
It's
the
okay.
door.
That's life.
Yes,
Real
Chance is
life.
back from vacation. From anyone who's wondering, I actually get a lot of messages about where is Chance in the videos. I don't see
Yeah,
him.
I haven't seen him in a while.
Yeah, no, so my parents have actually been an incredible help. My daughter had scans a couple of weeks ago, and the trip to New York City and back, even for just a couple hours of scans, is more than like a 12-hour affair. So they
Yeah.
usually take him, and he goes on
Aw.
his vacation, we call it.
Oh, I love it. He probably loves it too, just to get some different smells
Absolutely. Yep.
out of the same old smells every day that he gets. Well, so as we're kind of wrapping up a little bit, I was thinking, maybe because you have been through so much and you're now on the other side of um, at least that early critical giant curveball that you got, what do you think resilience means for you as a part of being having a flower farm and running your business the way that you have chosen to run it? What does resilience come up for as that word for you?
Yeah, resilience is such a hard word to define. It
Yeah.
can mean so many different things. And I think it really is this mindset, uh, at least for me, it's this ability to, or if I take a step back, no matter what happens, the sun's going to rise and it's going to set. Like I have that saying. And
Yeah.
basically, the world is going to move on without you. So,
Right.
where do you want to be when the world moves on without you and you still have presence on this earth? Right? Like for me, it's about how do you put yourself in this headspace and get yourself into a place where you are still feeling like you can meaningfully contribute to society, that you're not in this mental state of either depression or whatever it is, like a fog, right? It's really being able
Mm-hmm.
to work through that. And a lot of it comes down to, in some ways, homework that you do on yourself. Resiliency is not something that someone just magically gets. And a lot of times people will get it through a hard experience. But I had done a lot of homework, I would say my early 30s, studying something called Stoic philosophy and really just understanding this concept of control what you can control,
Mm.
and let go of everything that you can't. And there's this one saying in Stoic philosophy that I love, which is that there's no such thing as good or bad. It's our interpretation of events that
Right.
make them good or bad, right? Like if you
Right.
even think about something like war, right? One side thinks that it's great
Mm-hmm.
and the other side thinks the outcome is terrible, right? So good and
Right.
bad is all up to interpretation. And so there's a lot of reframing that I've done on my daughter's cancer journey, but also in my personal life that I think has gotten me to a state where I feel like I can still function.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, so, okay, so maybe this last question then, if someone finds themselves, because I know a lot of flower farmers actually do this as a side hustle. It's, they do have a full-time job or whatever they're doing. What advice could you give someone if they find they're, in the thick of the season? You are right in the middle of summer, and if someone gets the crazy curveball thrown to them, what kind of advice could you give someone?
Yeah, it's actually advice that a former manager gave me. His wife had battled leukemia, and it's really just make sure you take care of yourself.
Mm,
Make sure you take care of yourself physically, mentally. And as long as you're able to do that, you can decide later on whether or not you want to continue on with the business. You can take a pause. Nothing is permanent or forever, except for, I guess, death in this case.
yeah, yeah.
But assuming that you're still alive, look,
Mm-hmm.
even if a loved one has passed on, right, you will eventually need to move on too, right? And it's okay to take a step back, pause, and really take that time to take care of yourself so that you can do what's best for you in the future.
Yeah, that is good advice. I mean, I think a lot of us feel the need to make a decision immediately sometimes, and usually that's not the best time to make a decision. If you've had something major get thrown at you, that is a good time to pause and just step back and not make any kind of major decisions at that point.
Exactly.
So, wow, very good advice. Well, so your daughter is doing well from all the YouTube updates that I have seen. So very, very happy to hear that. And you're doing well. You're taking care of yourself now, and you guys are really into the nutrition and everything. It's amazing what you've been doing. Amazing.
Yeah, we've definitely taken we cared about our health before, but I would say that
Mm-hmm.
this was in some ways a wake-up call for us,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that we were doing everything right before and now really getting a little bit more granular on testing to be able to assess without making assumptions. And certain assumptions that we had before were actually false, right? So
Wow.
I do feel like it was a bit of a wake-up call for us, and really thinking about, even though we're in our 30s right now, how do we maintain and obviously be healthy enough also to take care of E throughout her
Yeah.
journey too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, this has been just such a delight. It's just really fun to watch your videos, and I love all of your number crunching, and so I really appreciate you taking some time to have a little chat about some resilience in flower farming. So,
I
all
appreciate you
right.
having me on, Lisa.
Thank you so much. I'll see you in the Patreon group. If anybody's not in her Patreon group, I would highly recommend it. It's she does take a lot of deep dives into some things. If you like the kind of behind the scenes, the data, she does amazing long form articles and videos on there. And I was catching back up on it last night, and she's got some really amazing stuff in there. So I'll put the link to your Patreon down in the show notes if somebody wants to go check it out.
Thank you.
So,
That's so sweet of you.
yeah, my pleasure. Well, thanks so much for joining us today.
It was great being on. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessie. Thanks, everyone. And hopefully, we'll be back next week with another episode on building some resilience in some flower farming world. So, thank you, everyone. Bye.